Okay, so for this lesson in InDesign, we're going to go over some basic organization and object management skills. So it's going to be things like organizing layers, organizing objects within those layers, knowing how to modify text and graphic frames, knowing how to create columns and things like that, and how to work with links in your projects. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up the lesson folder, and you'll click on the Start InDesign file. And if you get this, just hit modify or update modified links, and the project should look like that. So first, what we're going to go over is the layers panel. If you don't see that off to your right, just go to Window, Layers, and it should pop up. So the layer that you're working on, or if you have an object within that layer, the layer name will be highlighted, and also a little pen icon will appear that's just telling you that you have that layer selected, and if you add new objects, that's where it will be added. So just always pay attention to what layer you are on. It's not quite as unforgiving as Photoshop is, where once you draw something, it's stuck there. With InDesign and Illustrator, you can grab objects and move them to the correct layer, but it's just easier to do it the right way the first time. If you go over to the very left side, you'll see what looks like some eyeballs. That toggles your visibility. So if you want to hide a layer temporarily, you can just hit that eyeball and it toggles it off for a little bit. Everything's still there, it's just hidden from view. The next column over, it should be empty right now, but if you click into one of those squares, you'll see it adds a lock, and what that does is it just keeps you from editing that layer. So you can see, even though I'm clicking all this stuff, I can't select anything because it's on that text layer that I've locked. But now that I've unlocked it, I can grab and move things around. So next part I'm going to go over is working with a graphics frame. So a graphic frame is basically a frame that has an image in it. If I select this, you can see when I hover over it, it has this circle in the center. That's the content grabber, because a graphics frame is just that, it is a frame. So if you want to move how the photo looks, you can do that. You can see after I've clicked on the circle here, there's this brown bounding box that appeared that's wider than the frame, and if I grab it, I can move the image around, or I can even scale it up. So that's something to keep in mind with graphics frames. You can change how much of a photo or how much of an image that you're showing. So I'm just going to undo this, that way it's like that. And I'm going to select that flower, the one that looks like a heart, and you'll see that it has a blue outline around it. And you'll see that if we go to our layers panel, the text layer has that same blue. That means that this image is on the text layer. We don't want that, because obviously this is a graphic, not text. So for organization's sake, we want to move it up to the graphics layer. You can just copy and paste it, or what you can do is you'll see this little highlighted box off to the right. You can click that and drag to the layer you want to move it to. And if I let go, you can see the color of the frame change to red, and that's telling me that it's been moved to the graphics layer. Okay, so next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a third layer that's going to hold our background images, because when you're working on a more complicated project, if you have a background color like this, or you have a background image, selecting objects and stuff can be difficult, because you can accidentally select the background as well when you don't want to do that. So we're going to put these two on their own layer so we don't have to worry about messing with them. So first up is we're going to go ahead and lock the graphics layer so we don't mess with anything on there. And in our layers panel, we're going to create a new layer It should look like a square with a plus sign in it. If you're using an older version, it might look like a post-it note with a corner bent on it. But we're just going to hit that new layer button, and you'll see it created a new layer, layer 3. I'm just going to double click on that so I can change the name. It's usually a good idea to name your different layers so that way you know how things are organized, and if somebody else goes to look at your project, they know what they're looking at as well. So I'm going to name that background, and I'm going to move that to the very bottom. I'm just going to click and drag downwards. Alright, so then I'm going to go to my spread here, and I'm going to click on the green square, and I'm going to click on the photo. So I have them both selected now. And you can see that that blue square showed up. I'm going to click and drag to background layer, and now they're both on that background layer. And then I'm going to move to the next spread. So you can do that by either going to the bottom here and clicking these arrows, or if you want, you can just grab your hand tool and just move the old-fashioned way. But we want to move these colors, or these color blocks, to the background layer as well. So we're going to select those, and we're going to click on that colored square and drag down to background. So now those are on there as well. And then we're going to lock that background layer so we don't have to worry about accidentally messing with it when we go to deal with our smaller assets. Okay, next up is we're going to go to our front and back covers. So that's on that previous spread here. It should look like that. And we're going to add some text. So I'm going to add it to the left-hand side over here. And make sure you have your text layer selected. Earlier I still had my background layer selected, and since it was locked, you can see I have this icon with the pencil and the no sign there. That's just telling me that I'm on a locked layer. So I'm going to go up to text, and you should see that my cursor changes to the type tool. So I'm going to click at the corner of that margin there, and I'm going to go all the way over to the second column and drag it so it's about an inch tall. You don't have to be very exact because we'll go ahead and fix that later on, but make sure you have at least an inch so that way you have some room to work with. And first up, what we're going to type is featured, and then we're going to hold Shift and then enter. If you're on a Mac, that key might say return instead, so just Shift enter, and that's going to create a line break for us. Now the reason why you want a line break rather than to just hit enter or return is when you create a line break, you're still technically working in the same paragraph, and that's going to be important for when we go to work with paragraph styles. If you want things to be on separate lines but you want them to be classified in the same paragraph, that's why you would use that line break rather than just return. So I'm going to do that again. Once you've typed in featured, make sure you hit Shift, return, and you have a line break, and then you're going to type in blossoms. Okay, next up is we're going to go into our paragraph styles. If you don't have it off to the right here, just go to Window, Styles, and Paragraph Styles should be listed in there, but we're going to go to Paragraph Styles, and we are going to go down to Right Flush Title. Now, if you've done this right, when you hit Right Flush Title, everything should move to the right and it should get bolded. If when you typed in featured, you just hit entered, or you just hit enter, when you hit Right Flush Title, it's probably going to only affect either features or blossoms. So make sure when you type in feature, you hit Shift, enter. Don't just hit enter, otherwise you'll have to apply the paragraph style twice. So I'm just going to go back to my selection tool, and if I click on this square here, that automatically sizes it to what the height of my content is. That's just a shortcut that comes in handy every so often. Okay, next up is we're going to go over to this page and we're going to select the Botanical Gardens Worldwide. And you'll see, if I zoom in here, it has that square with the red plus sign in it. That means we have overset text, which means we have more text than our frame can fit. So with my selection tool, I'm going to grab this bottom. I'm going to drag it down to about 6.5, and you'll see that it has that guide that I'm going down to. But after I do that, you'll see that the overset error disappears and I can see all my text. But what we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of spice to this frame. So we want to add a curved edge to this side. So as a little review, remember that the selection tool is your black arrow that lets you grab objects and move them around and add some transform effects to it. Your white arrow, which is your direct selection tool, lets you grab anchor points. So those are those little white dots that create paths, and if I click on one, I can grab it and move it around and create this really unique shape. What I want to do is first I'm going to bring that point up and I'm going to hold shift so that way it stays in line. And it's going to go up to that guide that's right before it. So it should be at about 5.5 down the page. And it'll create the slant, but you can see we have that overset error again. So I'm going to add a curve to this. And the way you can do that is if you look for your pen tool and right click on it, there should be a convert direction point tool that lets you convert anchor points. So like right now all these corners are set to be sharp corners. Whereas if I go to that tool and I click on this anchor point here and I'm going to click and drag, it turns it into a curve and it now has handles that I can mess with and I can edit them around. The shortcut for this tool is Shift C. But once I have those handles created, I can go back to my white arrow and I can edit this a bit more. So I'm just going to edit the curve so this right side is still mostly straight, but I'm going to add a bit of a bulbous end to it. You want to make sure that there's enough space created that we can see all of the text. I don't want to see that overset text error. So you don't have to be exact, just try and get it as close to what mine looks as you can. All right, next up is we're going to create a multi-column text frame. So I'm just going to view my spread. The shortcut for that, if you're on Mac, it'll be Command Option 0. If you're on Windows, it's Control Option 0. That just zooms out your view so that way you can see your entire spread. You can also go to View and then Fit Spread in Window. That's another option. So what you can do is, rather than creating 3 columns and threading them like we did in the first project, is we have this one big text frame and we're just going to add columns after the fact. So select this text frame and we're going to go to Object, Text Frame Options. Now I have preview turned on so that way you can see what's happening as we change our settings. Make sure you have that turned on so you can see what you're doing. First thing we're going to change is where it says number, go up to 3 so that way we have 3 columns. Your gutter should be 0.125, and then you can go ahead and just hit OK. Now you can see that the way it's set up now is the foxglove paragraph is kind of cut in half. Same with calla lily. Design wise, it just doesn't look very good, and also you just want to make things as easy as possible for the reader. You don't want to cause too much work for them. So what we're going to do is grab your type tool again And we're going to put our cursor right before Foxglove. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move Foxglove into the other column. But we don't want to do that by just hitting the enter button over and over, because if we were to type into these two paragraphs, that would keep moving Foxglove in this column, and it's just a big headache we don't want to deal with. We just want to be able to move over to the second column and not have to worry about too much about formatting over here affecting what's going on over here. So with your cursor right before Foxglove, we're going to right click, insert break character, and we're going to do a column break. Now you can see that we've got these symbols that are showing up. After we added that column break, you should see a new symbol appear. And it should look like a V or like a pointing down arrow. That's just telling us that's where the column break is. Sometimes you'll want to see these symbols for like a project that has a lot of text with a lot of formatting. You want to be able to just glance and see what kind of formatting it is rather than kind of having to poke at it and dissect it. So we're going to do that again, but we're going to go to Crocus. So put your cursor right before the C there. Right click, insert break character, column break. You'll see it added another symbol and it moved Crocus over into the third column. Now we won't really have to do much with these symbols, so we're just going to go to type and then hide hidden characters, and those blue characters should disappear now. Next is we're going to go to our layers panel and we're going to unlock our graphics layer because we're going to start messing with some stuff in there. Okay, so go ahead and grab this object up here. It'll be the object that says Urban Oasis Garden. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Object, Text Frame Options again. And this time we're going to mess with the inset spacing and we're going to mess with the vertical justification. So again, make sure your preview's turned on. And pay attention to the inset spacing. You'll see something that might look like a chain link. If it looks like that, go ahead and click it and turn it off so that way it looks like the chain has a cross through it. What this does is if this is turned on, all these settings will stay uniform to each other. But we want our left and right settings to be different. So we're going to disable the chain link there. And you're going to want your left to be 2 inches and your right to be 0.625, and you should see the text kind of moving around after we input those values. And then we're going to go to the vertical justification, and we're going to change where it says align. We're going to change top to center. So now it'll be more in the middle there. And once you have your settings looking like this, you can just hit OK. And there you go. Now we want this spring 2019 to actually be kind of over here, more separated from the title. So we're going to grab our type tool and we're going to put it right before the S in spring. And we're going to go to right click, insert special character, other, and we want right indent tab. And you should see it move it over to the right there. Now we're going to move on to working with some graphic frames and how to edit those and mess with those. So go ahead and make sure that you have your text layer locked so that way you don't accidentally add anything to it and you have your graphics frame selected or your graphic layer selected. And on this cover page we're going to zoom in and we're going to add a logo to this corner here. So we're going to go to the rectangular frame tool. Make sure it's the frame tool and not the shape tool. Your frame tool should have an X in it. So click on that. And we want to make sure that it's aligned with this margin here. And we're going to go about 3/4 of the way to the top. And we're going to go drag downwards and bring it down to about halfway through Urban Oasis. Make sure you're filling up that column, and then just let go, and it should create a frame for us. Now with that frame still selected, we're going to go to File, Place. Alright, and in our Lesson 3 folder, we're going to go to Links and look for Urban Oasis logo.ai. That's our logo file. And the reason that we're working with an AI file in this case is since it's an AI file, we want it to be vector, which means we can scale it without worrying about blurring. So just hit open, and you'll see that it clips off our logo there. What we're going to do is we're going to grab our selection tool, and we're going to extend that frame. Now when we're grabbing this, we're not actually grabbing the image, we're grabbing the frame. The frame just creates a viewport for the image. And we're just going to grab that out so that way we can see the entire thing. Now the reason InDesign works with frames rather than just having the raw image there is there are some cases where you might not want to display the entire image. You might want to display only a small portion of it, and we'll go through that on another part of this project here, but we want to display the whole thing. So just kind of stretch it out until you can see the end of the leaf there. Okay, so I'm going to deselect that by just clicking on my pasteboard, and we're going to add this logo to the corner here. Now this stuff is all reversed because of the packaging and how it would be sent out and how it would be folded and things like that. So all this stuff is upside down. Don't worry about that for right now. So we're going to go here, and we're going to go to File, Place again. And we're going to grab that same logo file, hit Open, and we want to add the logo in this kind of area right here. So just click a little below this text frame here and just click and drag. Don't just click, you need to click and drag outward. And you'll see that it is keeping it proportional to what the actual image is. Don't worry about that, just keep dragging it until you are aligned with that margin there. And when you let go, the logo should be just right there, and it should fit just fine. If you're worried that it is clipping off at an awkward angle, you can right click and go to Fitting, and there are a bunch of options that you can pick from. This doesn't look like it's cut off any. Yeah, it's fine. You can see the logo is right side up while the text is upside down. We want the logo to match the text. So with your black arrow, just make sure that this logo is selected. We're going to right click, transform, and we're going to rotate 180 degrees. And it should reverse it upside down. If it does something wonky when you go to rotate, make sure that your reference point is in the center. If it's like in one of these corners here, it'll rotate around that corner rather than the center point. So just make sure you have that center point selected, and then transform, rotate 180, and that should flip it upside down for us. Alright, next up is we want to add some images that will correlate to the text that we have down here. So I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to be working in this area here. So first off is make sure that you don't have anything selected, so click out into your pasteboard there. And we're going to go to File, Place, and we're going to grab the rose, the foxglove, the crocus, the hydrangea, and the stargazer lily. Oh, and then also grab the calla lily as well. Then we're going to hit Open, and it should load your cursor up. If it didn't load your cursor up, that means you had something selected, so just Control Z it, deselect everything, and then try that File, Place again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create our frame. Don't just click and let go. We're going to click and drag. And we're going to bring it all the way out to this margin here. Don't worry that it's going past into our text. Before you let go, you're going to hit your arrow keys. So find your arrow keys on your keyboard. And you're going to hit up once. You should see, if you look carefully, some dotted lines appeared in the middle. That just created a row. And next we're going to hit the right arrow key twice. So 1, 2. You should see now that 6 little squares were created. And just make sure that they are lined up that margin there. And we're just going to go to about at the top of where it has like planting garden. You'll see a smart guide appear. So just kind of drag it to there and then let go. And it should have put those graphic frames or those graphics into their own frames. If that didn't happen, that probably meant that you didn't hit your arrow keys. So just undo, create the frame, and then hit your arrow keys. It'll be up once and right twice. Now you can see that due to the different sizes of these photos, they don't quite fit into the frames all that well. And there are different ways that you can change this. So the first way is you can manually change how a photo fills a frame. So we're going to go to this first one where it has the rows. If you hover over it with your black arrow, that's your selection tool, you'll see this little circle appears. That's your content grabber. That lets you grab the photo itself and move it around and resize it rather than the frame. So if we click on that, you'll see it has like this light blue around the image. And I'm going to hold Shift Option. I'm on Mac, so it's Shift Option. If you're on Windows, it might be Shift Alt. And I'm just going to scale this so that way it fits into the frame better. So I'm going to scale it real big so that way you can see the red part bleeds into these other pictures. But when I let go, it's going to stay within that frame that I had picked out. So I'm just going to scale this down a little bit more so it's a bit more reasonable. Just resize it so that it fills the fills the frame a bit more. And you can actually, by clicking on that circle, you can actually grab and move the image around and try and change the centering of it. It's like usually you don't want things to be dead center. That just doesn't make it very visually interesting. You usually want to use the rule of thirds, which is you are taking up 1/3 of the screen, rather whether that's to the left, to the top, or to the bottom. Just want it to be a little off center. Another way to fill a frame is if we select the frame that we want to work in. So we're going to grab this one and we're going to right click and we can go to fitting and we can go to fill frame proportionally. And if I hit that, you can see it fills up the frame. Now I don't really like this placing or where it's put the viewport. So what I'm going to do is, with my black arrow, I'm going to grab the content grabber and I'm just going to move it to a slightly more interesting part of the photo. So, I'm going to say about there will be good. I want you to go ahead and recreate those steps for the last few images. You can either click and resize manually like we did with the rows, or you can do like what we did with the foxglove, where we clicked on the frame, right click, fitting, fill frame proportionally, and then we just move the picture to something more interesting. Okay, next up is I'm going to show you how you can change the gap between columns. So like, let's say if we want to show a bit more of the crocus there, or if we want to show a bit more of the hydrangea, what you're going to do is you are going to find your gap tool. So it should be the fourth tool there. The shortcut for it is U. It should be underneath your page tool. So just grab your gap tool, and we're going to go over here. And you can see that it kind of grays out this whole gutter here. We just want to change the spacing on this top row here. So you can see if I just click and drag here, it moves the entire column. I just want to move this top part here. So if I hold shift, you can see it only highlights that top row, and I'm just going to click and I'm just going to go one gutter space further. And I'm going to go ahead and do that down here as well. So again, just if you want to affect only one section, you just hold shift, click, and then drag it out. And you might have to fix your photos. Okay, so another cool thing that InDesign does is if you know how much you want to move an asset, but you don't know the specific coordinates, InDesign can do that math for you. So what you're going to do is, with your selection tool, just grab those first few images there. That'll be your top row. And we're going to change our reference point to the lower left-hand corner. So I'm just going to click there. And then I'm going to go up to my Y coordinate. And I'm going to erase the inches, but I'm going to keep the original position there. And I'm going to just hit minus 0.0625. So you should still have the original entry in there, minus 0.0625, and if you hit enter, it will do the calculation for you and move it up 0.0625 of an inch. Okay, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to add some captions to the bottom of these photos here, and we're going to use the metadata that's attached to these photos to do it. Metadata is like the invisible information that's linked to a file. So what you're going to do is select all of the flowers, and you're going to go to your links panel. If you can't see that, go to Window, Links, and you'll see that the photos we have selected are highlighted. Right click, Captions, Caption Setup. And what you want to do is make sure that there's nothing in text before. Make sure metadata is set to description. It might take you a bit to find that. It's after credit but before headline. And go ahead where it says text after, put a space and then type flower. Make sure you have that space there. Otherwise, it's not going to put a space between our metadata and the text that we put there. We want the caption to appear below the image. Make sure your offset is set to 0.02 inches. Leave the style to photo credit, same as image. And then once you have your caption set up looking like that, just hit OK. You won't see anything change right away. Just right click and go back to captions, and we're going to generate static captions. Now, the difference between static and live is when you create a static caption, once it's added, that's the end of it. Whereas a live caption will update as you edit metadata, or if you change this caption setup, it will update those captions. We're just going to use the static option. There, and you'll see it added the name and then flower after or below each photo there. Okay, next up is I'm going to zoom out here and I'm going to deselect my images. Okay, so now I'm going to go over how you can link graphics frames, sort of like how we linked text frames in that first project. So go ahead and grab your content conveyor or your content collector. It should be the 5th tool. If you don't see it, try looking for your content placer tool, but it should be the content collector tool. When you click on it, this conveyor should come open. Go ahead and just drag that somewhere where it won't be in the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to collect this heart flower, and we're going to collect this circle planting image. What this allows us to do is we can grab those images and move them to other parts in the project. It's a little bit easier than just copying and pasting because you can grab a whole bunch of images and then you can just switch between which one you're adding somewhere else. You don't have to go up here, copy, go to where you need to, paste, go back to wherever the second graphic is, copy it, go back, place. You can just have them all listed here and just click on which one you want to add. So once these two are added to your conveyor, we're going to go to page 3. So you can double click on that page to get sent there. And where we clicked on Content Collector, we're going to right click and change that to Content Placer tool. And you'll see it loads up our cursor like if we had gone to File Place. Another advantage of this is if you just copy and paste things, they're not linked. Whereas the way we're going to paste them right now is they are linked. So if we change one, it'll change the other. So before you place your images, make sure in the conveyor you have Create Link checkmarked. And we're going to go over to our pasteboard, which is the empty area outside of our canvas. And we're just going to add our images over here, and then we'll move them over as needed. Okay, now I'm going to select this image here, and I'm going to go over to links. And you can see if you might have to drag this down a little bit. But you can see that the bleeding heart image is selected twice in our links panel. And you'll notice one of them has the greater and less than symbols on it. That means that there is a parent-child relationship between the two images. Again, that parent-child relationship just means if you change one, it changes the other. And you'll also notice these orange numbers and letters. That tells you where it's located. So, like, these are located on page 4, these are on page 1, and PB means pasteboard. So, like, this bleeding heart is right here on the pasteboard. That's what it means. You can also click on those numbers and be immediately brought to that object. Okay, so first thing what we're going to do is we're going to grab this circle image, and we're going to drag that down here. We want to place that so the top is aligned with the plant in your garden, and we just want to go about 1/4 of the way over. The image itself should be lined up with that margin. And we're just going to place that there. And then we're going to go back up to page 1. And we're going to find the circle frame or the circle image that's located here. And we're going to add a border to it. So we're going to go up to the control panel. If you can't see the control panel, make sure that your viewport is set to Essentials Classic. And we're going to select paper, and we're going to make the width 5. And you can see that we've changed it there. But if we go back to page 3, you'll see that it has a warning symbol on it. That's telling us that one of them has been modified, and it's asking us if we want to modify the other one as well. So you can just click on that, and it should update it. Okay, so another thing that I'm going to show you is if you replace the image, it will replace the images in the other one as well. So click on this Bleeding Hearts image, and we're going to go to File, Place, and find Bleeding Heart New. Make sure it has New in the title. Don't just click this one again. Click Bleeding Heart New. And then hit Open, and as long as you have that graphic frame selected, it should have added it to that graphic frame that we had selected. And you'll notice that this one's a bit darker than the original. And if we go here, I'm going to find the Bleeding Heart that's in the pasteboard. You can see it's giving us that option to update again. So I'm going to click on it, and voila. Alternatively, you can also, in your links panel, you can just hit that update link button, and it'll update it that way as well. Okay, next we're going to grab this Bleeding Heart image. It's the one in our pasteboard, and we're going to move it over here. Say around there. Maybe put it a bit more centered. Alright, let's place it so that way it overlaps with the last two lines of the first paragraph there. Now, we want to make this image a bit bigger, so we're going to go up to the scale options, which are up here. You can also right-click, transform, and scale. That's another option. And make sure those are linked, and we're going to grow it by 175%. And you can go to preview and see what that does, and just hit OK. And you should get a really big image, and we're going to move that back so it's only overlapping with those last two lines. Now you can see that we have the issue of the image being on top of the text, which if you've been listening, you know we need to make things as easy for the reader as possible. Putting an image on top of the text is not making it easy for them to read. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Window and Text Wrap, and it should pop out the the panel for you. And what we want is there should be a bunch of options along here. If you hit that second one, it's going to use the bounding box that's around the image. Now if I click off of that, you can see it's just not, we can see the text now, we can read it, but it just doesn't look very nice. So I'm going to pick that third option, which is wrap around an object shape. And the default is probably going to be same as clipping, so you can see we still have that image or that issue where it's just a big rectangle box and it doesn't look very nice. We're going to change that to, you can either do detect edges or alpha channel. Alpha channel is the transparency layer for an image, so that holds the information of where there's nothing there. You're going to have that with like PNGs, or since this is a PSD, it should have an alpha channel. So you can see it follows that edge more closely. And you can also do detect edges if you don't have a very accurate alpha channel. Either one of these should work for you. I'm going to do detect edges because it did a better job of that, but you can see it had some really funky results, like we have spot and fall and for caught in the middle of that. What we're going to do is we're going to change the margin, so it's still going to detect the edges, but we're going to spread it out a little bit more. So in that first text box there, I'm just going to put my cursor in there, and I'm going to hit the up arrow, and you can see it expands my border there. But you can see if I do it too much, I'm going to get a funky effect, and you can see at some sizes it kind of creates this weird spacing with the is the and result of. So just kind of make sure you're paying attention to that. do 1.25, and then I'm just going to move this downwards. So that way this line is whole. Just make sure you're paying attention, you don't have any weird spacing, but it should look something like that once you have it finished. And again, that's what my settings look like in the text wrap panel. Should just be 0.125 and either detect edges or alpha channel. Okay, next up is I'm going to show you some more ways to edit shapes. In particular, we're going to create a compound shape. So what you're going to do is we're going to go back to the bottom of this page 3, and we're going to grab the rectangle frame tool, and you're going to click out into the pasteboard, and we're going to create a frame that matches these guides here. So it should be extending past the page, past this purple, and going to those light blue lines. I'm going to let go, and it should have created a frame there. So what we're going to do next is with our black arrow, our selection tools, we're going to make sure we're going to grab that frame tool we just made. And we're going to unlock our background layer, and we're going to select this purple shape as well. And then you need to find your Pathfinder panel. If you don't see it over here, if you go to Window, Object and Layout, Pathfinder will be in there. And what we want to do is we want to subtract where the two shapes are intersecting. So we're going to go to Subtract. And if you had the smaller rectangle selected first and then the purple shape, you should see that part of the purple disappear. Okay, so we're going to go back to layers, and we're going to lock this background layer again, and we're going to go back to graphics, and we're going to add just some decorative shapes in this column, or in this row right here. So we're going to grab your rectangle tool. This is the rectangle without an X in it. So grab your rectangle tool and just make a square. All right, so we're going to make it 0.5 and 0.5. And make it a white square. It might be labeled paper in your swatches. And we're going to go ahead and move this square so that way it's centered within the row, and try and put it about as centered in the column as you can. Now, InDesign has this convert shape function in it. If we go to where the rectangle tool is, you see we do have an option for rectangle, ellipse, or polygon, but if we go to Object, Convert Shape, you can see we have a lot more options to pick from. We're just going to do the normal ellipse, but like say if you wanted a triangle or a rounded rectangle or beveled rectangle, those options are in here as well. Just click ellipse for right now, and it should have turned it into a circle for us. Now we want to create a line of circles going along this row here, and we can copy and paste them, but an easier way to make a whole bunch of them is with this circle still selected, go to Edit, Step and Repeat, and we're going to repeat this for a count of 8. And we want the horizontal. It might give you an error at first. You might have to change your horizontal value first. So just change that to 0.875. And then it should let you change the count. So if it doesn't let you change the count first, change the horizontal value and then add the count. Alright, once we're happy with that, we can hit OK. And if you have preview selected, you can already see that it created the circles we wanted. So I'm going to select all of these, and I'm just going to nudge them over. So that way the last circle is in line with that margin center. Now let's say we've looked at this now and we don't really like how that looks, and we want to get rid of a few of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete the 3rd and 8th circle. So 1 and then 1, 2, 3. So we're going to get rid of these 2 circles, but you'll see that throws off our spacing. What we can do is we can select all of these, and we can go to Align. Again, if you can't find that, go to Window. It'll be Object and Layout, and then Align. And try and find Align 2. If you can't see that, go up to these lines up here, click on that, and change that to Show Options. And it should give you this option where it says Align 2. And make sure it's set to Align to Selection. What it's going to do is it's going to look at what we have already, and it's going to look at these 2 on the end here, and it's going to go, okay, those are our endpoints, and we'll space everything out in between it. So there are a bunch of different options in here. They come in handy for different situations. Just hit Align to Selection, and you're going to want Distribute Horizontal Centers. So it's this object under Distribute Objects. Click that, and they should space out evenly again. Next up is I'm going to show you how to add a rounded corner to a frame. So we're going to go back up to page 1, and we're going to go to that blue frame there. Now if you have your text layer still locked, go ahead and unlock it and select that. And you'll see this yellow square there. If you hover over it, it should say click to edit corners. If you click that, the yellow square should move to the very tip of the corner. And if you click and drag, you won't see anything at first, but you're going to want to drag that yellow diamond to approximately 0.2 inches and let go, and you'll see it added a corner to there. Alternatively, you can also just go up into your control panel, and that option that has the blue dots connected with gray lines, that controls the curve of your corners as well. So you can see that's what our text frame looks like now. Okay, next is we're going to go back down to this image here, and we're going to fix the size of it so that way it goes within our margin. Remember, the margin sets out the safe area for you. So we're just going to select that graphic frame, and we're going to bring it in. So you'll notice it kind of cuts off our image. Remember, you just right click, fitting, fill frame proportionally, and it will fix it. We are going to go to page 2. And you'll see we have all these little images off to the side that aren't aligned, and they're just kind of out in nowhere land. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all these little images. I'm going to go to my layers and make sure my background is still locked up. And we're going to select all of these little images. Make sure you don't have, or you don't accidentally select this shape here. So you might want to lock the text layer too, and just get those little shapes there. And we want to align the right edges. So we're going to go back to our Align panel, find Align Right Edges. It'll be the 3rd option under Align Objects. Just hit that, and they should fit all right in there. All right, next up is we're going to go up, and we're going to select these 2, and we're just going to make sure that those are centered to the page. So in our Align panel, where it says Align to, we're going to change that to Align Page. And we're going to hit that second option. It's called Align Horizontal Centers. And you can see, like, if these were off center, if I hit that, it'll center it to the page. Okay, so we're gonna go back to these icons here, and you'll notice that 2 of the icons are a lot smaller than their counterparts. So we're gonna select both of them. Make sure your reference point is set at the center. Make sure you have your black arrow, and we're just gonna scale those out. Make sure you're holding Shift Command if you're on Mac. If you're on Windows, it'll be Shift Control. That will make sure that they scale properly. And then once they are the same size as the other squares, just go ahead and let go. But you can see that we have the issue where they aren't spaced out the way they should be. So we're just going to select everything. And we're going to go back to that align, and we're going to distribute the spacing. Make sure your align to is set to selection again. And you're going to distribute vertical centers this time, so that way they will align correctly. Okay, next up is I want to add some decorative icons along the top here. So I'm going to grab the shovel, I'm going to grab a tomato, a pot, a tree, and a sun. And on Mac, you'll hold Option. On a Windows computer, you'll hold Alt. And I'm just going to click and drag to make some duplicates there. Now I want these to run the same width as our white box here. I want to line the first one up with our previous icons, and I'm going to put it about there. And I want these to be in about the same place. I'm going to put the end one here, and I want the center to be where that guide is. And I want it to be centered with the previous icon I just placed. You can see a smart guide will appear on my screen. It's a really light green. I'm going to let go. And I'm just going to eyeball the others. And I can go in and go back to my align panel. Make sure it's set to selection. And I'm going to align vertical centers. And then I'm going to distribute spacing. There you go. I'm going to just nudge them a couple spaces up. There you go. Alright, I do want these to look a little bit different from the icons over here, so I'm going to deselect everything, and I'm going to select that trowel. And I'm going to make sure that my reference point is in the center. You just click the center point to put it there, if it isn't already. And I'm going to go to scale, make sure your chain link is turned on. I want to scale it up 125%. And I'm going to go over to the angle and change that to 30. So rather than going through all these and doing that over and over again, I'm just going to select them all at once. And I'm going to go to Object, Transform again, and we're going to go to Transform Sequence again individually. If you just do Transform again individually, it's just going to do the rotation. It's not going to do the transform and rotation. So we're just going to hit that. And it should have done the same thing to those other ones that it did to the trawl. Make sure that you hit the individually option. Otherwise, it's going to take them all into account, and it will move them all kind of like the arm of a windmill rather than just moving them individually. Okay, so you can see that this text box is a bit cut off from the white background that we have, so we want to fix that. So go ahead and go to your layers and unlock the text area, and we're going to go ahead and select that little section there. Now what you have selected are all these graphics to the left, this table, and then the white rounded rectangle. We don't want the white rectangle in our selection, so you're going to hold Shift and click that rectangle, and it will deselect it from our selection. And we're just going to move this table and the graphics down a little bit so that it fits more into the square. The bottom of the table should fit with the bottom of the margin. And there you go. Next is we're going to go up here to this icon. Now, the difference between this icon and the other icons that we have on there is the other ones where we did the file place. Those are Illustrator files. This particular one was made in InDesign, so it's an object where we can select the individual shapes. It's grouped right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our control panel. Again, if you can't see the control panel, make sure you're in Essentials Classic. And you'll see this little area that kind of looks like a family tree. You're going to go to the one that has the arrow pointing down. And that's with this icon selected. Hit that one and it should select the cityscape. We're going to hit the right. So you can see it selects this color leaf here. And we can actually go to the selection and change the color if we want. But what we're going to do is we're going to hit right again. And it should select this little purple sliver there. We're going to change that color to green dark. And then we're going to hit the right one again. We're going to keep going until you have this upper pink red part of the leaf. And we're going to change that color to green brightest. So this should be green brightest, that part should be green medium, and that one should be green dark. And the icon should now look like this, and if we deselect it, there we go. Next is we're going to go back up to pages, and we're going to go to what's labeled as page 4, where it has featured blossoms. And we're going to select our line tool, and we're going to give it a little bit of space underneath the featured blossoms, and you're going to click where that margin is, and we're going to drag. If you hold shift, it'll make sure it keeps a straight line. We're going to go all the way into the second column, and then we'll let go. Go up here and change the stroke color to black, and then we're going to go to our stroke panel. If you don't already see it over here, you'll have to go to Window and then Stroke. So bring up this panel, make sure that you still have your line selected, and we're going to go to where it says Weight, and we're going to change that to 4. And then this is going to be our start arrowhead. And we want that to be a solid, or it's going to be labeled circle solid. We'll hit that. And this is going to be the end. And we want that to be a curved arrow. There we go. So you'll see it has curved and it should have an arrow. Hit that. And you've got a decorative arrow. Okay, so you can see these are both kind of pretty big and they're kind of clunky. So we're going to go down to where it says scale. If the chain link is turned on, turn it off because we want to scale the two ends at different rates. We want the start to be at about 75. And we want the end to stay at 150. And you should have seen them change over here. Next up is we are going to add a QR code. For those of you that don't know, a QR code is this image where if you have a QR reader on your phone, you can take a picture of it, and that your phone knows after reading that image to go to whatever you have linked to it. So you can have like a QR code that links to your website. You can link it to like a donation page. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. The reason you'd want to use a donation, or you'd want to use a QR code rather than an actual link, is, again, it's just for ease. It's easier for someone to take a picture and have their phone bring them there rather than them bring up the browser, type www. Insert your address, It's just easier to have the QR code, so it's point, click, and they're there. So I'm going to grab my black arrow, click in my pasteboard so I make sure I have nothing selected. And I'm going to go to Option, Generate QR Code. And it should bring up this window for you. So just go over to color and make sure it says black. And we're going to go back to content, and where it says type, we're going to change that to web hyperlink. You can see that there are a bunch of different options. It doesn't have to just link to a website. You can also send a text message, an email, things like that. But we're just going to do web hyperlink. And in the UR field, we're going to type in http://. Make sure you put in this HTTP so that way the phone knows that it's going to be on the internet. If you just do the www right off the bat, it might try and look for it locally. So make sure you put in this beginning part and then just type in www.adobe.com and hit OK. And you'll see it will load your cursor with a QR code graphic. So just click once and it will add the QR there, and we want it to be centered with the text there. The edge of the frame should be butting up against it. And it should look like that. And then if you were to use a QR reader on your phone, it should bring you to the Adobe website. Alright, so to look at your project without like all the guides and frames, you can go down here and go to Preview, and you can view your project like that, or you can go to Presentation mode and you can look at the spread without any distractions or anything like that, and you can use your arrow keys to flip through the pages. Okay, once you are happy with the project and you have everything that you need on it, go ahead and save it as your last name underscore prac3. Just save it as an InDesign file and put it in that lesson 3 folder that we had. And save put the entire folder into a zip file. Save that zip file as your last name, and then turn it into Canvas.